Our company's passion is we improve everything we touch. And one of the things that I did not love about RadioShacks is if it didn't exist, I didn't change anybody's life. If we weren't there, okay, you would just go to Walmart and buy batteries. If we weren't there, you go buy your remote control car at Target. And I didn't feel like we were making an impact, that we were changing lives. And I love apartments and I love housing. And I love development because we're making a difference.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Podcast. I am your host, Matt Druin, and this is the show to listen to, watch if you are an experienced real estate investor that maybe owns a couple duplexes, maybe owns a couple single-family houses, that want to scale up their real estate empire, do larger deals, do retail strip plazas, big multifamily deals, big single-family deals, as our guest is on today. And I'm psyched out of my mind to introduce him. His name is Dale Wills. He's an experienced real estate developer who has been involved in the industry for more than 25 years. He's the owner and founder of Centra companies. And since 2011, he has overseen development of more than 1,500 homes across 50 plus projects, totaling more than $500 million in project value. He recently established Centra Capital Partners, a real estate syndication company partnering with accredited investors to build wealth through the ground up single family home developments in the Midwest. The Centra team controls the developments from start to finish, leveraging its industry experts to source, entitle, build, and sell each home, which allows them to control costs, control risks, and adhere to the schedule. Very important stuff. Dale, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. This is going to be fun.
All right, cool. So rapid fire, man. You were born, now you're here. What happened in between?
So I grew up in Northern California at the base of the Sierras, and I was the seventh of 10 kids. And so there was a lot, when you've got 10 kids, mom can only do so much. And so there was a lot of independence, but they really encouraged me. Interesting story. I started my first business when I was in third grade, and we had no agriculture experience, but I figured out that if I bought pigs, little pigs, and raised them up, I could make money. And so I would go and I would convince people, hey, Matt, you're like, your family likes pork. Yeah. And yeah, how do you say no to a third grader? And so I'd convince you that, okay, pay 50% now. And then when we deliver the pork, you pay the other half. Well, I figured out that 50% paid for the pig and all the food. And then when we were processed, you pay for the processing, I'd make all my money. And so that was my first business adventure, was selling pigs in the third grade. And, so I did, lots of different things. And you fast forward about 18 years old, I worked in construction for a period of time, framing houses and doing various jobs, and did that for a couple of years. And then I met my wife, we fell in love, we got married, and I had an opportunity to move to Las Vegas, Nevada. And somebody that saw something in me that said, we think he could do this. And I had an opportunity to do mortgage banking for a period of time. So we moved there, did mortgage banking, and eventually did development and construction lending. The interesting thing is I'm 21 years old. I'd never had a loan in my life, let alone even owned a house. And so I had to just make it up as I went. I had to learn the industry. I had to learn how it worked, and really just fell in love with the industry in general, not the banking part of it, but the industry of construction and development and change and improving things. So we did that for a few years and eventually moved to Utah. And in Utah, worked in banking for a period of time, did development loans for a large developer, home builder. Well, actually, he was smaller at the time. And he asked me to come on and work for him. He was doing about 80 homes a year at the time. And within a year, we got him up to doing 320 homes. And it was pretty exciting. It was a lot of fun. I love being involved in fast-paced growth. And so that was a lot of fun. And then an interesting is I got a little bit detoured, and I had an opportunity to buy a RadioShack franchise. For those that don't know, RadioShack franchise is just a bunch of electronics gadgets that nobody really needs. And so I bought this store and then ended up getting involved in two more, had three of them that we were involved in. And the store that we had, the first store we had actually became the number one franchise in the world. It was the biggest producing franchise. And we were doing a ton at the time with cell phones were starting to get popular, and you didn't have all the cell phone stores we have today. And so RadioShack was a primary distributor for cell phones and satellite dishes. Dish Network. You couldn't, like now you just get online, but you had to go to a store. And so we sold a lot of that, and we had a lot of success. And then the September 11th happened, and retail fell apart for that year. And so we got out, and it was an amazing learning experience for me. One, I learned I don't want to ever do retail again. And two, it forced me to learn how to run a business and pay attention to the numbers. I'm a big believer in the language of business is accounting. And if you can't speak the language of the business, how can you run your business? And that's the biggest thing I learned. The lesson I learned is how do you understand accounting? How do you apply those principles? From there, I went back into real estate because I loved it. I missed it. I wanted to be back in it. And for a period of time, worked for a company that built a city from scratch. So we had to create our own sewer company. We had to create our own water company. We developed a golf course. We developed the commercial centers, the apartments, the master planning, all of the single family homes. And it was pretty cool, to create an entire city from scratch. Today, you look at that city today, this was 22, 3 years ago, I was doing this. That city today, I don't know. I'm going to guess is 40,000 plus population. And it was zero population 25 years ago. So that was a lot of fun. From there, I went and started my own home building company, had a partner, had some success, ended up selling that to another builder, and then worked for a national developer and home building company. And was only there a few months, and they asked me to go to Minnesota. And living in Utah at the time, I'm like, well, first thing I went to my office to figure out where's Minnesota. I just know that it's cold because, professional football shows it's really cold in Minnesota. And so I went back and said, yeah, I'll go 3 years max, though. We're going to turn that operation around. I'm coming back. I'm not staying in Minnesota. And that was 18 and a half years ago. And so worked for them. The market fell apart. 2008 happened. And 2010, I'm like, I'm going to go work for myself again. I've worked for myself more than I worked for others, and I'm going to go back to work for myself. And so I went to this company and said, hey, this isn't the right fit. I need to move on. They said, well, if you're not there, we don't want to be there. Would you just buy all of our assets? Because I told them I'm just going to start my own company. I said, yeah. So I bought all of their assets in Minnesota, started up Centra. We launched in January of 2011. And then we focused a lot on distressed assets. The banks owned a ton of assets, whether it was partially finished buildings, partially finished developments, raw ground, just a ton of assets that they had. And so we worked through those assets and had a lot of success, made a lot of money and a lot of fun because everybody else is just, oh, what do we do? The world's ending. And so that was really exciting. And, but that ran its course. The bank got through those assets, and then we started developing ourselves again. So we were developing land, we were building homes. We do some apartment projects, whether it's rehab, some commercial properties that we own, and continue to do that. And then about 9 months ago, we started a company called Centra Capital Partners, which is an equity fund that people can invest, co-invest, and build wealth with us in the projects that we're doing. And now we're here today. So there's the whole story from birth to now.
Excellent, Dale. So you've had like a really interesting cross section of history with, I remember distinctly 9/11, the teacher rolled out like the TV in the room for the entire class to watch as the second plane hit. And, being an 18-year-old or 17-year-old or however old I was at the time, definitely didn't hit me the same way as people were like, they owned, RadioShack businesses. And by the way, my dad, I think, was the first person that bought a car phone in Rochester, New York, which took up like half of his trunk. And he bought it from RadioShack. So hats off to one of the best stores to exist in human history. But you had a cross section of a lot of different types of asset classes and business models and that sort of thing. And from reading your bio, it seems like you found this focus on the single family. So from industrial to apartments to, all this other like types of asset classes, like what drew you to that based upon all your experiences?
I think in part, our company's passion is we improve everything we touch. And one of the things that I did not love about Radio Shacks is if it didn't exist, I didn't change anybody's life. You know, if we weren't there, okay, you would just go to Walmart and buy batteries. If we weren't there, you go buy your remote control car at Target. And I didn't feel like we were making an impact, that we were changing lives. And I love apartments and I love housing and I love development because we're making a difference. It's if you think about it, for most people, I hope that they're positive memories, but your most formidable years were sitting in front of the TV with your family, sitting at the dinner table, having dinner, learning how to ride your bike in the front yard, playing catch in the backyard, swinging on the swing set. And those are amazing memories. And I love the fact that we facilitate the spaces to create those memories. We make a difference. We go in, we might go in, we had one project, there was a school that was no longer used. There was contamination in the ground. The school's had asbestos. We went in and we tore the school out. We cleaned up the ground. We reclaimed the dirt and we built a whole bunch of houses that I can go there today. And now the trees are 30 feet tall. And people are, going back and forth to work and playing catch in their yards. And it's like, yeah, we did that. We made a difference for a lot of people in their lives. And I love that. And I think that's the big driver to me is that we're impacting good. And that just thrills me.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Same thing here. I mean, we're obviously a for-profit company, but mission oriented. I mean, my big aha moment was when I did my first commercial deal, like commercial, like retail office. And I met tenants or prospective tenants for the first time where I actually felt like I had a partnership with, and that I could play a small chapter of support in their evolution from feeling like scared as hell of moving out of their garage into their first like actual brick and mortar space to aiding in their own self-determination with not only putting food on their table, but then hiring people and putting food on the table for them as well. So I think that that's definitely really important, especially from a sustainability standpoint, because if you're out there and you're in a business where it's only numbers oriented but you're not, like, let's say it sucks, so to speak. I've seen so many people burn out from that. So definitely that definitely rang true with me. So Dale, let's talk about your case study that you want to talk about today. Like maybe like your your fire breathing dragon that you ended up turning into a fire breathing unicorn, and kind of take that and dissect it and add some value to our audience. So what do you have in mind for us today?
As we talked about this before we went live, and there's so many pivotal points that we can pinpoint and say that was a pivotal point that helped me to get to where I am today and who I am today. And there's just so many of them. But there's one that came to mind. It's really the foundation of it is our belief systems. We'll find what we're looking for in life. And we had just started the company. And this was Centra, and there's a lot of distressed assets out there. We had just started the company new. We had just bought the assets from this other company. And we just didn't have a lot of capital, and we're trying to get it going. But it was all based on a belief system that we could do this. And if we didn't have a belief system, what happened? Well, we got a really great reputation working with banks, and people knew it, and that was starting to go out there. We had an opportunity. A finance company reached out and said, "Hey, we've got 450 different properties. Would you guys be interested in buying them?" And some of them it was just an individual lot. Others it was a piece of land that we developed into 100 lots, and so it was a variety. I said, "Yeah, certainly, we're interested." So they sent us the information, and it's like, okay, we need to sell this quick. So we're underwriting it as fast as we can. Imagine driving around looking at 450 properties. I wasn't exactly sure how we were going to finance this thing because it was a multi-million-dollar deal. It's like, I don't know where I'm going to get the money, but if it's the right, I'll figure it out. And so, we're underwriting this thing, and I'm calling up friends saying, "Hey, I got this deal. You got, I don't remember what it was, $8 million, $9 million or something." And so I'm underwriting this, acting like I know how we're going to do this deal. Well, it's funny. they call me up and they said, yeah, we want to come out and meet with you. We want to make sure you're the real deal. And I'm like, oh yeah, certainly you can. Why? Well, we're just concerned whether or not you really have the ability to pull this off. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course, come out. I get off the phone. I'm like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. How am I going to pull this off? So we were leasing a couple of offices in the second story. A friend owned this building, and I went to him and I said, hey Ken, um, I got this group coming in. Would you mind if they come in and they just see the receptionist, and the receptionist calls me on my cell phone? I'll come downstairs. I'll come through the back, and then I'm going to use your conference room to meet with them. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. So we do it. They come to town and they call me on the phone. I come through the back door, go through their offices. I come in acting like I own the place, and we sit down in the conference center. And they're like, wow, you're the real deal. You've got something going on here. I said, oh yeah, we can do this deal. They walk out and I still have no clue how I'm going to buy this thing. And ultimately, I found a good friend ended up funding the deal, which turned into a long relationship that he funded multiple deals over and over. And we made a lot of money together. He still invests with me on deals today. But I think that the most important thing was I believed we could pull it off, but I had no clue how. And I think that's just so important, whether I'm buying my first house or I'm buying my first, fourplex or a first apartment complex or development. I think our mindset's just so key. Now, we've got to have some technical and we've got to have some business acumen. We've got to understand it, but we don't need to necessarily always know how we're going to do it when we get going.
Oh, I've definitely been guilty of being a cowboy a lot throughout my career, but it's those seminal moments that I've had where I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I definitely believed in myself. And also just in terms of like a different, going back when I was feeling fear of like, can I actually do this? And looking back on, well, I did something, I worked on a 247 unit, super distressed apartment turnaround for another developer. Why can't I do this 28 unit deal on my own behalf? Right. So just kind of like, it definitely comes with, I think it comes with experience. And then if you don't have the experience, getting somebody on your team that has the experience and, like we're going through it right now. I mean, we're, going to be doing a $25 million redevelopment of a couple of historic skyscrapers in downtown Rochester. And, we're bolting somebody on our team that has done several of these projects to advise us through it. And with that, we have the confidence to do that. So on the capital raising side of things, knowing what you know now, like what would you have done like differently, or what do you apply going forward now with it, your success in raising capital for your guys' funds and deals?
Every deal is different. We've raised over $100 million in capital that we've done in deals over the years, but we've never opened it up to the public. We've never opened it up and say, hey, Matt, you want in on this deal? The 100 million's always been with individuals that are higher net worth that we say, hey, here's a deal you want to put in, X million, and they would do it. And so it's fairly new to us raising capital. So our minimum investment's $100,000, and that aspect's new. We've not allowed, here's a deal, and we're going to allow 20 people in that, average of 300,000 a piece kind of a thing. That's not something that we've done. And so we're excited about it because we're opening it up. We're giving more people the opportunity. Real estate's pretty sexy. It's pretty fun. I love real estate. Well, how does the average person get into it? You can go buy a rental and have your first rental. Well, some people don't want that. Some people, it's great. It's fantastic. Do it. You've got the acumen, make it happen. And other people are like, I don't want to deal with renters. I don't want to deal with the cockroaches. I don't want to deal with all the hassles of the rental. And so we love it because it's giving opportunities for that person that says, I want to be in real estate because it's sexy. It's fun. It's got great returns, but I don't want to deal with that. And so it gives them the opportunity to come in. And so we're right now new to this. We've funded a couple of projects so far on the smaller scale. Funding, raising 5 million here, 8 million there has not been a problem. But, now we're raising it and allowing individuals to invest up, as minimum $100,000. So it's been fun. It's been exciting. The enthusiasm that's like, yeah, you can actually own part of this subdivision. You can go touch it. How often, I can go get Tesla stock, but I'm pretty sure Elon Musk is not going to go give me a tour of his plant. I can go buy Wells Fargo Bank stock, but I'm pretty sure if I walk in and say, "Hey, I'm one of the owners," they're going to laugh at me. Whereas here, it's like, yeah, you can get in your car if you really wanted to and go drive around and see what's being built and say, "I'm making a difference, and this is cool." And so yeah, we really love doing this.
Now, $100 million in capital raise before you ever had to go out to the public market. I mean, that's one thing in terms of a testament. I mean, a lot of times people are researching on, okay, how do I buy bigger deals without, my own access to capital being a bottleneck to my growth? And people Google this, they YouTube this, and they start seeing this word syndication around a lot. And I have this, like, I'm, fighting this battle, like on a, sometimes on a daily basis. Like, you can buy a lot of real estate before you ever have to go the syndication route. So tell me about, like, as you were kind of like, bootstrapping and then going through your own network and, growing up to that $100 million range of capital raise, like, what was it kind of like your framework and methodology that led to you being able to do that? Like, if you were going to, like, rewind the clock back, and, like, was that, going through your contact list on your phone and just, like, dialing for dollars, so to speak? Or tell me about like what your, like, kind of like recipe for success for that was.
I think, Matt, you said something earlier that I think really hits it. You said, well, I work for this company and we're rehabbing this 200 plus unit. You had a belief system, something was possible. You had a belief system, you could do something there. You said, well, why can't I do a smaller scale for myself? Which shifted your belief system. And I think this isn't technical advice I'm giving. A lot of people want that technical advice of, okay, do this then. Whereas I actually believe the most important thing is our mindset, our belief systems. When I started Centra, as an example, the market had fallen apart. There were not a lot of jobs in real estate. And my belief system was I was unemployable. I don't know if that was true or not, Matt. I don't know. I look back at it, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but that was my belief system. And that belief system at the time empowered me. The reason it empowered me is I didn't go look for a job. I said, I'm going to go work for myself again. If nobody's going to employ me, I'll go do my own thing. And I had a belief system I could succeed at it. Now, we all have belief systems. Some of our belief systems are empowering and some of them are disempowering. But it doesn't matter if it's true or not if we believe it. And I believed I was unemployable. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I believed it, and it facilitated my ability to go start another company. And so that's where I think our mindset is so important. I love to tell young people this. If you think about it, I really believe that our belief system is really made up of our 5 closest friends. And that's who influences us. So I love to say, all right, Matt, envision where you want to be 20 years from now. And say, all right, you got a good picture. Okay, Matt, how many people do you associate with on a regular basis that are there? Now, if somebody gives me an answer of 1 or more, I say, well, then you don't have a very big dream. Your vision is not big enough. Because in reality, if you've got a big vision, you might know people that are there, but you don't associate with them regularly, unless it's mom or dad or aunt or uncle kind of thing. Well, what do you do about that? If I'm going to be influenced by my 5 closest, what do I do about that? How do I change that? Because all of a sudden, if I have this vision of owning millions of dollars of real estate, but I have no friends that'll hang out with me, that's going to help that mindset, what do I do about it? The answer is exactly what we're doing right now. Podcasts. Listen to every single podcast that you've produced, and you've got some really smart people as guests. And what does that do for you? All of a sudden you start hearing stories about some guy that had no idea how he was going to buy multi-millions of dollars of real estate, but he just believed, and he made it up and made it look like he had this big fancy office, and he just persisted and he tried until he figured out how to raise the capital and found somebody to invest. All of a sudden you start seeing, oh, if he could do it, maybe I can do it. oh, hey, if Matt can go and start and do these rehab apartment complexes, maybe there's a way I can do it. And then all of a sudden you start seeing ways to make it happen because every deal I do, it's different. How we executed it, how it became possible is different. How did I get into a Radio Shack with no money? I had no money at the time. I got into it and all of a sudden I own a Radio Shack and had zero money out of my pocket. Well, I don't know how to teach you how to replicate that. You know, I don't know how to teach you how to replicate going and buying millions of dollars of real estate with no idea how you're going to fund it. I have no idea how to replicate. You're going to start a home building company because every circumstance is different. The key is changing that mindset. Listen to podcasts, read books. Eventually, as you get more and more successful, now you can afford to be part of different networking groups. You can afford, but elevate who you're around. Because anybody that's listening to this that is self-employed or has gotten into real estate can relate to this at some level, of the people that say, you need to go get a steady job. You need to go get a salary. Why are you doing that? You'll never succeed. And that's most of the people around us. Well, what do you do when everybody around you is saying, that's a dumb idea? You got to create that energy. You got to, you read biographies about people that have been there, listen to podcasts, people have been there, and you create that. I'm in a fortunate position now that I'm part of some networking groups of people that are really smart and successful. And so they're rubbing off on me all the time. But you don't have that when you're getting going. And so I think that's the key. I mean, that's not an X's and O's, and that's what most people want. But the X's and O's are different every time. Now, I could give X's and O's. How do you buy your first rental property and how do you buy your third rental property? But, you've had podcasts about that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, in regards to belief, I was a philosophy minor in college. And so one of my favorite lessons from that was the epistemology, the theory of knowledge, for instance. And knowledge is made up of three fundamental components. There's belief, truth, and evidence. It starts with belief first in order to know your own success. So I definitely am a subscriber to that. I do want to switch gears a little bit because I was thinking about this before we called you in for this interview. And housing is a hot button issue. Everybody agrees that the housing system has been really broken for several decades. So let's say you were the housing czar right now, and you were able to craft all of the policies that would be needed to create affordable housing production. What would your prescription be?
I would start with getting rid of all the policies. The part of the challenge is there's just so many things. We've got, for the last 3 years, we're averaging 5.21 inflation. Well, that's all of a sudden made housing a lot more expensive because lumber's more expensive and siding is more expensive and labor's more expensive, and that's driving the cost of housing. You've got regulation. There's some places in the country, there's places in California, it takes you 15 years to develop a piece of property. And, if I've got to carry that land for 15 years and the interest on it, and then all the hoops I have to jump through, it makes the houses much more expensive. As the government continues to give subsidies, well, that drives part of the inflation. And so you put all these things together and it's really difficult. So I am very much in favor of, we need to protect the consumer's best interest. We need to protect our environment. The problem is there's so many different stakeholders in the process, and everybody wants to protect their turf and point fingers and say, well, if you guys would, we could fix this. But you can go into a development and have to deal with as many as 10 different government agencies who have what they believe is a good purpose, but now you got 10 agencies you're trying to deal with. When the government's coming in and trying to subsidize things, that is driving inflation. And so the challenge is it's really difficult to solve this without getting all the stakeholders. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. For us, we've looked at it and said, all right, what can we actually influence? What can we do? And we've done things internally that has helped drive prices down. And so we're doing our part. But the reality is there's not much I'm going to be able to do in changing EPA policy. There's not much I'm going to be able to do in changing a lot of the watershed district's policies. There's not a lot I can do in changing zoning or building code. Minnesota, who we're most familiar with, we've done work throughout the nation in different levels, but Minnesota's got the most expensive building code in the nation. You have Hudson, Wisconsin is right on the border from Minnesota. I can build the same house in Hudson, Wisconsin for $25,000 less than the one across the river. Well, in that case, that's 15% of the cost of a house, 10 to 15%, depending on the house. Well, that's all building code. Well, I'm not going to say that Minnesota's misguided in their building code because they're all important, but where do we find that balance of, our building code is so strict that now people can't even afford a house. So you put all those together, it's a tough battle that we're dealing with. And I don't know that we can fully solve it because I don't know that we're ready to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's like some people out there that are like, okay, maybe the problem even has to get worse. A lot of the tragedies that have happened throughout human history that have brought people together. I'm just hopeful it doesn't have to get that bad in order to actually come to a resolution. Last question before I get to you to say how our listeners can get in touch with you is on entitlement. Actually, let me take that back. Dirt. Okay, how do you know what to pay for dirt when you're looking at a potential development project?
Part of it, you got to have experts involved. For us, the areas that we currently develop, we know the areas. We know it really well, but you need to get experts involved because depending on what part of the country you're in, you could be dealing with soils that aren't buildable. They're soft and I've got to dig down to get to a hard base. You can be dealing with contamination. We just passed on a deal that golf courses in the 70s would fertilize their greens with mercury. We knew that. Well, we started testing it. We found out not only did they fertilize their greens with mercury, they fertilized their fairways with mercury. All of a sudden, it made that deal not possible because to reclaim that soil and clean it up, they needed to give us the land for free, and it just didn't make any sense. And so the important thing is there's just so many variables that you're dealing with in land that you've got to make sure that if you don't have the experience, you need to get the right consultants involved that understand it, because that's where we see people, I know of a deal just 3 years ago that it was a $6 million deal. They paid without any entitlements, any of the homework. And I'm like, man, they are screwed. And they closed on this thing. And then all of a sudden found out that they were in a floodplain and they had some black dirt. So black dirt, meaning really soft soils that they had to dig down 8 feet before they got to solid dirt and then backfill 8 feet. And it was a disaster for them. And us, we knew this because we had experience in the area. Had they gotten the right consultants in place that understood it and could advise them, they could have adjusted their price accordingly. Instead, they just lost a ton of money. And so I think there's a book Ben Hardy wrote called Who Not How. And I love the principle because it's exactly what's in the title. We focus so much on how do we do things. And I think it's important on who's the expert to hire and hire the best who's to help you get there versus how to get there. And I think that's true on land. Until you've got the experience, make sure you got the right who's, the expert that understands what you're dealing with.
100%. That's how it could be a cowboy, is that I trust the experts. So
yeah, you said that earlier. I love that. You say I'm a cowboy. I love that. I love being a cowboy. Just make sure you got some really good cowboys that are on the ride with you that know their stuff. Because go be a cowboy. Go get rich. I want to see everybody rich. So Matt, you're on your journey. You're getting rich. You're making a lot of money. You just make sure you got some really good cowboys riding with you.
Absolutely. I love my crew. All right, Dale, you've been generous with your time. How do our listeners get in touch with you and learn about what Centra does and the projects you have in the pipeline?
Yeah, so we've got CentraCapitalPartners.com, CENTRA capitalpartners.com is a great place to see projects that we've got going on. I'm really active on LinkedIn. That's a great place to just connect with people and share ideas. We love connecting with people. So those are LinkedIn at Dale R. Wills, and then CentraCapitalPartners.com is great ways to connect with us and see what we've got going on.
Excellent. We'll be sure to put that in the show notes, and I'll catch you in the green room right after this.
Thanks, Matt.